Just one human. I can scare him off. Alaric was just about to approach Chester to scare him, but before he could, Kryptina quickly pulled him back into the bushes with the other vampires. Then all of a sudden, Chester popped his head up as he heard the bushes rattling. He turned to the bushes where Kryptina, Alaric, and the other vampires were hiding in. Chester lifted a brow, and he slowly began to approach the bushes, and as he slowly reached his hand into the bushes, he found a small piece of white fur stuck in between the vines. He slowly took it out and sniffed it. He turned away and threw the white ball of fur onto the ground. "Shh! That was a close one," Kryptina sighed with relief. "What are you so scared of?" Alaric took her hands off his face. "We had a school of vampires with us, remember?" Alaric said, resting his hands on his hips. They all got out of the bushes. Alaric landed on top of Kryptina. The vampires looked around with excitement. They haven't been out of the castle a while since Alaric's parents went missing. "No!" Alaric made fists. "I told you. We can't go out when the sun's rising up." He rested his hand on his face for a second. "Go back to the school." He points back at the castle. "Aw, man!" All the vampires sighed, leaving Alaric and Kryptina alone. "So is that a painting of you and your parents back in the castle?" "Of course. You sure I don't look like my father at least?" He rested his hands on his hips and got off of her. "Listen," Kryptina got up and looked at Alaric. "I'm not supposed to be here. I gotta get back." She looks around the grass. "Oh, thank Dracula, 'cause my Aunt Death is mad to get rid of you." He takes her hand. "Wait." She shakes her hand off of his. "Why?" "I can't let you come back here." He ties a blindfold on her and grabs her hand again. "It's secret. If Oxblood or my parents see you, they will have you for dinner for sure." "No, wait." Kryptina kneels on the ground, moving her hands around the grass. "I need my crossbow and wooden stake back." Alaric smirks at her. "What do you need that for? Shooting your cat again?" "No!" Kryptina turns away, crossing her arms. "Shooting... Oh, never mind." She waves her hand and crosses her arms again. Just then, they suddenly heard a painful cry in the forest. They both popped their heads up. "That sounded bad," Kryptina said with worry. "We have to see what's going on." Alaric said, "You hear a bloodthirsty cry, and you run towards it?" Kryptina lifted the blindfold. "The only way to stop trouble is to understand it. Let's go." They both rushed off as the blindfold fell off Kryptina's head, leaving it behind. They suddenly stopped running as they saw a little ball of fur caught in a trap. They both slowly stepped towards it to see a mother wolf lying there, dead, and a wolf pup crying as its paw was stuck in a trap. The mother wolf and wolf pup had brown ragged fur. The mother and wolf pup were skin and bone, and their fur was even torn apart, leaving some bald spots on them. "Alaric, what are we going to do? We won't be able to bring him back to the city in time, and I don't have my first aid kit with me." Kryptina rested her hand on the sad and hungry little wolf pup. She always remembered she wanted to be a vampire slayer like her brother, but is this really what she will have to go through to end them? Kryptina didn't like seeing others get hurt as it is. "Well, I know of another way, but I won't even have enough time to do it," Alaric said with sorrow. "But we can't just leave him." Kryptina kneeled down, patting the wolf pup. "If we do, he'll die." A tear fell down her face. "I know." Alaric looked around the forest. He then lifts his finger and turns his head to think. "There's only one other way I can save him." Alaric narrows his eyes, seeing how hurt Kryptina and the wolf pup are. "Kryptina, you may want to look away." Kryptina turned away. She couldn't bear to see what he was going to do. Was he going to kill the wolf pup or what? "Okay, you can look now." As Kryptina turned to look at the wolf pup, she then noticed it was just lying there on the ground with a small piece of blood on his neck. "Shh! He's asleep," Alaric said, lifting his finger. "He kind of reminds me of my old pet Komodo dragon, Pokey." He giggled. "You had a pet Komodo dragon named Pokey?" Kryptina asked. "Yes, but that was a little while ago. I set him free and, well, I never saw him again," Alaric said, resting his finger on his chin. Alaric and Cryptina sat on a tree. Alaric picked up cockroaches and began eating them. He then drank from a small bottle filled with blood in it. No one can catch me, human girl. He drops the bottle onto a vampire trap, causing the trap to close shut. I used to do whatever I wanted back in London. I played with my friends and helped my brother get food. Now he wants me to stay in the city and work as a librarian in the castle all the time. Stay here in the forest. Alec transforms into a bat and flies under a tree branch hanging there. It's nice. No one ever bothers you unless it's ox blood. Cryptina turns to him with confusion, lifting a brow. Ox blood? Who's ox blood? Only my annoying teacher, Alaric said, rolling his eyes. He flies back on top of the tree branch and transforms back into himself. He always says humans are undisciplined, untrustworthy, and improper to join a real vampire school. Cryptina looks at him, beginning to smirk. Your teacher sounds like he's got a whole tree stuck up his butt. She giggled. Stop it! Alaric gently hits her. It's not funny, he giggled. Oh, yes, I can see the look on your face. He definitely does. She smirks, resting her hand on his shoulder. The Lord Protector! Cryptina looked at Alaric with worry. Alaric! Cryptina grabbed him by the shoulders. He wants the vampires dead. Gone. Alaric, you have to leave. She slightly shakes him. We were leaving. Alaric took her hands off his shoulders. He narrowed his eyes and crossed his arms. Then what stopped you? Your parents? Cryptina asked. Yes, but they left. Alaric grabbed an ant and munched on it. In their bat form? Cryptina leaned in. Yes, it's just me, them, and the rest of the whole school. He frowned as he hunched. But I'm sure it's an even better castle, with no humans around to bother us. It's gonna be amazing. He laid down on the tree branch. But what if they got caught? Cryptina looked at him with worry. No! He narrows his eyes and throws the bag on the ground. No one can catch my parents, and if they were caught by those city humans, I will get my vampires to suck the blood out of them. Well, don't worry. Wherever they are, we will find them. Cryptina smiles, getting up and leaped off the tree branch. Well, I guess I'm off then, Cryptina said with a smile, taking out a bat amulet, and she put it around his neck. Alaric lifted the amulet, giving it a look. He then smiles to himself with a blush. My city is right there. Cryptina points at the city. Thank you so much for helping me get back. I always liked to hear about vampires and vampire stories, but I never knew for sure if they existed or not. She smiled at him, trying not to let her feelings show. You're quite welcome, and don't worry about the wolf pup. He'll be up again in no time. He turned away with his cheeks beginning to turn red. Scare you later, Alaric said as he hissed at the sheep, causing them to run away. Cryptina exits the meadow, entering the city. Not if I scare you first, Cryptina said with a smile. He hissed with a smirk and quickly leaps into the trees. Cryptina turns with a smile, crossing her arms. You know I can still see you, right? Alaric looks at her, beginning to feel like he was burnt to a crisp. No you can't. He leaps into the trees, disappearing into the shadows. Cryptina walked by the small group of boys staring at her with curiosity. Where does she go every night? One of the boys asked, holding up a wooden cage. We should keep a close eye on her because something's not right. Danny rested his hand on his chin, lifting a brow. The blue moon shined brightly in the sky. Lydia sat down on a bench outside reading a book. She smiled with delight, enjoying her book, until all of a sudden Klaus leaped out in front of her, holding 6 red roses in his hands. For you, my little mosquito. He smirks, giving her the roses, and reaches out his hand to her. Lydia lifted a brow, putting her book down on the bench. Didn't I tell you to get lost the other night? Oh, yours is a tough love, but please forgive me. Klaus crawls down to her with a smirk. No matter how hard I try, I just can't stay away. Klaus leaned on her. Lydia sighed with annoyance, moving away from him. Okay, fine. What do you want? She rolls her eyes. Well, there was a blood fest going on, and I was wondering if you would be interested in joining me for the fun. He leans in with a smirk. Fine, but if I do this, will you promise to leave me alone? "Oh yes, my little thornbush, I promise." Klaus puts his hands together, smiling with delight as if he was going to trick Oxblood. "I must take my leave now, but I'll be back soon." He quickly rushes off, transforming into a bat and flying away. Lydia turned to see if he was still there, but he was nowhere in sight. "Did you get it ready?" Alaric giggled, sitting down behind Klaus, ready for class. "Oh, you bet I did," he giggled. They both smiled at one another. Thorn was sitting on the other side of the room reading a book. Duke was sitting behind her, looking at himself in a mirror, only seeing nothing. Henderson sat behind Alaric, trying to study. Alaric and Klaus both giggled as they saw the door opening, and they looked to see it was Oxblood slowly opening the door. "Alaric? Pumpkinfiend? What are you two laughing about now?" He lifted a brow with confusion. Just then, as he opened the door more, a bucket of water fell onto his head, causing him to fall onto the ground. He rose his head. Thorn gasped as Duke and Henderson laughed, pointing at Oxblood. Alaric! Pumpkinfiend!" Oxblood cried with anger. Alaric and Klaus looked at one another and quickly ran out of the room as if they were being chased by vampire hunters. Cryptina laid in her bed, beginning to feel as if she had a terrible virus. She began to toss and turn. She then tried gasping for air as she began to dream, seeing herself inside a dark and spooky castle. She saw a red path of scent flying in the air. She slowly began to follow it. She then noticed a small group of vampires at a table having a feast. There was a long mirror on the wall where the table and the vampires were at. Cryptina noticed a young vampire girl, but before she could get a closer look at them all, she suddenly felt someone shaking her and calling her name. "Cryptina! Cryptina!" What? Cryptina opened her eyes to see it was her brother Chester looking at her with worry. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I think that's the question for you." Chester rested his hand on her cheek. "You felt like you were going to freeze to death, and you almost looked as if you weren't going to wake up at all." Chester hugged her with worry. "Chester, I'm fine." Cryptina hugged him back. "Well, I don't want you going to the castle and to the library to work today." Chester gets off her bed. "You scared me half to death." "I'm sorry, Chester, and happy Halloween." "Happy Halloween to you too, Cryptina. I will get your ghost costume ready later, and hopefully Anastasia and I will see you later." Chester smiles, closing the door.